how, and why. WION, you are more connected than you know.
Vielleicht nur als 5%.
Hello and welcome to WION live broadcast from London. I'm Oliver Regan and these are the headlines. No breakthrough in peace talks on the Gaza war. Even though the Cairo talks have been extended by a day, US President Biden puts the onus for a truce on Hamas. Biden says he hopes a ceasefire will be in place by Monday. Fresh explosions in Gaza on Wednesday as Israel continues its offensive on the enclave. Trump versus Biden rematch on the cards for the US presidential election after the president and former president sweep statewide party nominations across the US. Nikki Haley, who won only in Vermont, now no longer has a viable path to the Republican nomination. China accuses the United States of using the Philippines as a pawn in the South China Sea as hostilities between the two Asian nations escalate over their territorial dispute in the region. A Chinese vessel fired water cannons at Philippine supply boats in the South China Sea on Tuesday. PM Modi's big infrastructure push in West Bengal ahead of the elections inaugurates under-river metro station in Kolkata. India's top court bans tiger safari in core area of Jim Corbett National Park, restricting it to peripheral and buffer zones. The Supreme Court slams Uttarakhand state officials over illegal construction around the park. Well, we start with the situation in West Asia. Joe Biden said a deal for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip in exchange for the release of Israeli hostages is in the hands of Hamas. The US president stated a ceasefire was necessary to get more aid into Gaza. Here's more on the truce talks and Biden's flip-flops on a potential ceasefire for hostages deal. Well, on February 26th, Biden said, "My hope is that by next Monday we will have a ceasefire." He was eating an ice cream while saying that, an act that attracted wide-scale criticism. Then, just days ago on March 1st, he said he hoped for Israel-Hamas ceasefire, that the deal would be by Ramadan. The Muslim fasting month of Ramadan begins at the start of next week. He now expects Hamas, already designated a terrorist organisation by the US, to decide the outcome of the negotiations. The US president said, and I quote, "We must get more aid into Gaza. There's no excuses, none."
Well, I hope by the beginning of the weekend. By the end of the weekend. At least my national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet. And my hope is by next Monday we'll have a ceasefire.
There is a ceasefire bill by Ramadan.
I hope so. We're still working real hard at it. Not there yet. It's in the hands of Hamas right now. The Israelis have been cooperating. There's an offer out there that's rational. We don't know what We'll know in a couple of days if it's going to happen. But we need the ceasefire.
The US, Qatar and Egypt are trying to broker a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. On Tuesday, Hamas negotiators stayed in Cairo for a third day of ceasefire talks in a bid to halt the fighting in time for Ramadan, free Israeli hostages and stave off famine. A 40-day ceasefire would allow some hostages captured in Hamas's October attack to go free, while aid to Gaza would be increased. Families would be able to return to abandoned homes. In the US, voters on the left are dissatisfied with Biden's unwavering support for Israel, as its military operations in Gaza have left more than 30,000 Palestinians dead. Well, we're now joined by our correspondent Jodie Cohen from Ranana. And Jodie, President Biden, of course, suggesting the ball is now in Hamas's courts. What do we know about their likely response to the talks?
Hi, Oliver. So according to reports, Hamas appears to have rejected the truce proposal which was accepted by Israel, and Hamas is still reportedly demanding most of its original demands, including a full ceasefire. Now, War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz, who had a meeting on Tuesday with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he said that ending the war without demilitarizing Rafah would be like firefighters putting out 80% of a fire. And remember, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu had called Hamas's demands delusional. Now, US State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller had called Israel's request for Hamas to provide a list of which of the 134 hostages being held captive in Gaza are still alive. He called that a fair request and seemed to dismiss Hamas's claims that they don't know where they are. And US President Biden suggested that Hamas was offered a rational deal. And as you said, he said that it's now in the hands of Hamas to respond.
Well, Jodie, any deal agreed is likely to help in tackling the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. What more can you tell us about the efforts to get more aid in the meantime?
So we know that in Secretary of State Blinken's meeting with Benny Gantz, they discussed the humanitarian crisis and efforts to get more aid into Gaza. Israel has been coordinating with several countries on aid airdrops, and they've said that there's no list of being on distributing the aid. And also Israel says that Hamas is stealing 60% of the aid that's meant for civilians. And Israel's now coordinating aid to enter by land, air, and now for the first time sea as well. Now, US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and visiting Qatari Prime Minister Al Thani, they issued a statement, and in that they said that a 6-week ceasefire would enable more humanitarian assistance to enter Gaza. But the Wall Street Journal is reporting that with Hamas still not accepting the deal, negotiators are now reportedly seeking a days-long pause in the fighting. Now, that would be to buy more time to try to reach a 6-week pause in the fighting, would potentially also enable more aid to get in and also give Hamas the opportunity to increase trust by producing this list of which of the hostages are still alive. This could be problematic for Israel because the days-long pause reportedly doesn't involve the return of any of the hostages, so it remains to be seen how this development would be received.
Our correspondent Jodie Cohen, many thanks for your insight there. Polls have now closed in Alaska, and with that, voting has now concluded for Super Tuesday. Projections show a clear lead for both President Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Surprisingly, Trump's Republican rival Nikki Haley won Vermont in the primary, and she picked up some delegates, but she remains far behind Trump. Projections show that Trump has emerged victorious in 15 states, indicating that the former president is moving closer to a possible rematch between him and President Biden. Biden is believed to have won Democratic nominations contests in 14 states. This includes the state of Iowa, where people voted by mail. According to exit polls, Biden is projected to lose the Democratic caucuses in American Samoa. Democrat Jason Palmer, an entrepreneur, has so far won 4 delegates and Biden 2. On the other hand, Trump, while speaking to his supporters at his Mar-a-Lago estate, called the projected win a big one.
Please welcome the next president.
USA, 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 USA. Well, thank you very much. They call it Super Tuesday for a reason. This is a big one. And they tell me like this has never been anything so conclusive. This was an amazing night, an amazing day. It's been an incredible period of time in our country's history. It's been sad in so many ways, but I think it's going to be inspiring because we're going to do something that, frankly, nobody's been able to do for a long time.
Well, as more developments are kicking in, let's quickly understand what is Super Tuesday and why the day's been dubbed as one of the most crucial days of the 2024 US election. Well, voters in 16 US states and 1 US territory are choosing their presidential candidates in primaries. Later today, the fate of 1,439 Democratic and 874 Republican delegates will be decided. Overall, Biden has secured 206 delegates so far. He needs a total of 1,968 out of the 3,934 delegates to win. 1,421 delegates, that represents roughly a third of all delegates, are up for grabs. On the other hand, the former president is standing with 244 delegates right now. Trump needs a total of 1,215 of the 2,429 delegates. In the Republican primary, 874 delegates are up for grabs on Super Tuesday. The US territory of American Samoa is simultaneously holding its Democratic caucus. Earlier, Haley's campaign sent out a last-minute fundraising email. The mail urged the people to step up with any amount they can before the polls close. Meanwhile, mega star Taylor Swift encouraged her millions of fans to vote in Super Tuesday primary contests across the US. However, the pop star did not endorse any specific candidate. Swift has more than 280 million followers on Instagram.
I just have one more.
Germany has blamed human error for the phone call recording that was intercepted and leaked by Russia. The conversation between senior German military officials discussed the supply of long-range weapons to Ukraine. German officials have now denied that its government communication systems had been compromised. In the audio recording published by the state-owned broadcaster Russia Today on Friday, 4 senior German officers, including the head of the Air Force, purportedly discussed supplying Taurus missiles to Kyiv. They also discussed how France and Britain are delivering and operating their own cruise missiles with shorter ranges. Berlin has not disputed the accuracy of the recording, but the British government has not yet commented. German Defence Minister Boris Pistorius says that the Russians intercepted a teleconference of German army officers, apparently by accessing a hotel's internet network in Singapore. He says the leak happened because not all participants of the teleconference had adhered to the secure dial-in procedure as pre-described. He emphasised that their communication systems are not and have not been compromised. The German government has come under immense pressure after the embarrassing wiretapping affair, due to which confidential discussions of German Air Force officers about the Ukraine war were intercepted and leaked to the Russian media last week. Senior military officers were discussing the possible delivery of long-range Taurus missiles to Ukraine and their potential use to destroy the Kerch Bridge that connects Crimea to Russia. Moscow accuses the quote-unquote collective West of using Ukraine to wage a proxy war against Russia, while NATO says it's helping Ukraine to defend itself against a war of aggression. Russia's oil and gas income increased by over 80% in February, reaching over $10 billion. That's despite Western sanctions in response to Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. On Tuesday, the Finance Ministry said that oil and gas taxes boosted the budget, bringing in 945.6 billion rubles, or $10.4 billion last month. Taxes on crude and petroleum products went up 80%. These taxes made up 84% of all oil revenues. The oil taxes were based on the average price of $65 a barrel of Urals, which is Russia's main export mix. It was less than $50 a year ago. In February 2023, the price of Ural dropped below $50 a barrel due to sanctions imposed by Western nations to curb Russia's oil revenues. Moscow's invasion of Ukraine has put a strain on Russia's finances, which had been receiving a boost from the country's oil and gas industries. The Kremlin has started boosting payouts to public sector employees as Vladimir Putin seeks a fifth presidential term in this month's presidential elections. He is all but certain to win. The boost to oil revenues poses an important question. Are sanctions on Moscow really working? Tesla continues to face hiccups in the European market. The automotive company's gigafactory near Berlin has been forced to halt production. That's after a suspected arson attack damaged its main power lines. This next report gets you all the details.
Tesla's European gigafactory near Berlin halted production on Tuesday. It was left without power after a suspected arson attack set an electricity pylon on fire close to the site. Police said the blaze was extinguished by the fire brigade and did not spread to the Tesla site. A spokesperson for the automaker confirmed production had stopped and the site was evacuated. Local media published a letter purportedly from a far-left activist organisation called the Volcano Group. In it, they claimed responsibility for the incident and criticised Tesla and its billionaire CEO Elon Musk. The Tesla boss called the suspected attack extremely dumb. Police said they were aware of the letter and checking its authenticity. Production at the car factory is not expected to resume before next week, according to the plant's manager. He further said the suspected attack severed both power lines feeding the facility. He added the production outage will cost more than $100 million. It was the latest setback for Tesla, which has had a bumpy ride in Europe of late. It's faced union pressure for collective bargaining agreements in the Nordics. The company has also seen supply disruptions as a result of attacks on shipping in the Red Sea. Tesla's plant outside Berlin has a capacity of around 500,000 cars a year. It wants to expand to producing 1 million vehicles annually. But environmental activists have built and occupied tree houses in the forested area they expect to be cleared if the expansion goes ahead.
Russia and China are considering putting a nuclear power plant on the moon. Yuri Borisov, the head of Russia's space agency Roscosmos, said the move could one day allow lunar settlements to be built. Borisov, a former deputy defence minister, said that Russia and China had been jointly working on a lunar programme. He said Moscow was able to contribute with its expertise on nuclear space energy. He stated solar panels would not be able to provide enough electricity to power future lunar settlements, while nuclear power could. Borisov also spoke of Russian plans to build a nuclear-powered cargo spaceship. He said all the technical questions concerning the project had been solved, apart from finding a solution on how to cool the nuclear reactor. Russian officials have spoken before of ambitious plans to one day mine on the moon. However, the Russian space programme has suffered a series of setbacks in recent years. Its first moon mission in 47 years failed last year after Russia's Luna 25 spacecraft spun out of control and crashed. Moscow has said it will launch further lunar missions and then will explore the possibility of a joint Russia-China crewed mission and even a lunar base. China said last month it aimed to put the first Chinese astronaut on the moon before 2030. Vladimir Putin last month dismissed a warning by the US that Moscow planned to put nuclear weapons in space as false. The Russian president said it was a ploy to draw Russia into arms negotiations on the West's terms. So,
всех, в том